Hey, this is Kev with Blender Binge, back with another tutorial. This time we're going to be creating an upside down world style tunnel from a very popular TV show that I was watching the other night, and I said, hey, that's going to be my next tutorial. So without further ado, let's jump in. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to create a camera kind of moving through this little tunnel thing. So the first thing we're going to do is create the camera on the path. So to do that, I'm going to simply add a curve, circle, and I'll go down here and I will say radius about 4. That looks pretty good. Then I will start getting this camera onto this to animate. So what I'll do is I'll select the camera and I'll zero it out. Not a completely necessary step, but I liked it because it keeps everything clean. So I'm going to hit Alt R to clear the rotation and Alt G to clear the location. So clear the rotation, rotation, location. So now we're going to attach this so it moves around the circle. So to do that, I simply, with the camera selected, I go over to this little constraints, object constraints tab, say add object constraints, follow path. The path I choose for the target here is Bezier circle, and then I just hit animate path. Great. So if I hit play now, he's going around. Wonderful. Next, I'm going to give him something to look at. So I'm going to go add, empty, I'll say plane axis, throws that into the middle, and the same thing as I just did with this, with the camera, I'm going to do with this. So with that selected, okay, empty, I'm simply going to go, you know what, here, I'm going to name this target, target, and I'm going to hit add object constraint, follow path, and just choose the target here, Bezier circle. Boom. Okay. So the target and target is not. This is just the camera target, and this is called target in the modifier. Don't get that confused. Okay. I just thought that'd be funny. So now what I'm going to do is select the camera, and I'm just going to have him look at this little target thing. So you know what? Let's first select the target, and see this little offset. Let's move it negative just a little bit. And now what we're going to do is just so we could see this happening here, and I will zoom in so you can see this happening. I'm going to select the camera. I'm going to go add object constraint. This time, I'm going to, instead of follow path, I'm going to choose track 2, and the target shall be the target. And I'm just going to give it a negative Z direction, and then the up axis here will be Y. And now, if I go back and I select the empty that we called target, you can see that the camera is in fact looking at this guy, and they're all moving around the circle. So if I hit play, they're all going around the circle. There they go, round and around and around. So next what we can do is we can give it a timeline change. So right now I have 250 frames. I want this to last a little bit longer, so I'm going to say 500. Okay. And then I'm going to change this Bezier curve. I'm going to go here to this little object data, and I'm going to say path animation, and the frames here is 100. So I'm going to change that to match my timeline, because we just made this 500 down here. I'm going to make this 500 here. And now you see, if I scrub this out here, okay, I have 500 frames active on the timeline, and you see that it'll loop. Going a bit slower, but that's fine because we're going to make this a heck of a lot bigger. And then being that we made that slower, I can take this, because this is a multiple of this, it's a ratio. I'm just going to go back to this offset for the target and push them a little bit further down. And this is going to become evident why I'm doing this in a minute. So next we build the tunnel. Dun, 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 tunnel. So I select this, I hit tab on the keyboard, okay, to edit mode. And now I can just start dragging these little points out. Okay, it's just a curve. Hit G, pull it out. Okay. Select another one, G, pull that out. Select another one, G, pull that out. And it's arbitrary. Okay, you're going to get a different result than I am, but that's okay. Right. Pull that out. And we can add more points. See, right now we only have 4 defining this circle. If I hit A to select all, and I go here to segments while I'm still in edit mode, okay, segments, and I hit subdivide, there. I've now given myself more to work with, which is cooler because it's going to look better It's going to be more interesting. Don't believe me? Just watch. All right. So, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then you just like, you know, Photoshop or Illustrator, you can drag these out too, but you don't want to make these corners too tight or else the effect is gets kind of crazy looking. Whatever. I'll stop there. That looks cool. I'm happy. Hit tab, play, and there we go. And then also because we stretched this out, remember this is a ratio, let's pull this back a little bit. Just have him looking forward. And there we go. Now he's moving. 500 frames worth. So what do we do now? Well, I'm going to build the tunnel, right? I said that before, and this is the first step in building the tunnel. Step 2 is give it geometry. Now I could give this geometry. I could go here, I can go to object data, and I can say geometry, and I can say depth and give it depth, right? That works. However, if I go here now and I try to add a modifier, I don't have the modifiers I need. I only have like half the modifiers available to me. Why? Because this is still like a curve object, a NURBS object. This is not a polygonal. So I'm not going to do it from there. What I will do, however, is I'm going to duplicate this Bezier circle, right? And I can just call this like camera path for now, right? This is now called camera path. I'm going to hit Shift D, don't touch my mouse, and just hit Enter. And now this one I can add depth to. And I'm going to call this one camera path 001 tunnel. There we go. So now if I hit 0, okay, 0 just brings you into camera view on the numeric keypad. I am in my tunnel and I seem to be moving at a decent speed. And aha, you see this little jerky movement here? It's like shaky movement. I can fix that by going to camera path, right? Going up, and this resolution preview U, jack that up to like 64. And there, that smooths out my motion pretty nicely. And now I am going through a tunnel. And I could also like turn render U up, but render, that doesn't really, it's not going to matter too much. All right, so there, tunnel, that problem solved. On to step 3 of our tunnel making. I have to turn this into a geometry. So to do that, okay, our tunnel, I simply go to Object, with it selected, go to Object, Convert to, and you only have 2 choices, Curve from Mesh or Mesh from Curve. Well, let's do Mesh from Curve. Now, if I hit Tab, you'll see this is in fact polygon, and we now have, if I go to Modifiers, Add Modifier, I have all my modifiers back. So, the next step in here, Subdivision Surface to smooth it out. All right, let's say Render 3, Viewport 3, great. And now we make the tunnel. So if I hit 0, because this is going to be like way cooler, don't hit F, I just hit that by mistake. Hit 0, we're in the tunnel. First thing we'll do is add another modifier. I'll say Displace. I will go down here now, hit New, hit this little button here, or you could hit this, doesn't matter, either or. Image or Movie, and I'm going to choose Clouds. And look at that. Freaky. Yeah, it's like spiky. But it's not exactly what we want. So all you have to do for that is just take the size here and turn it up to like 1.6 or something, right? There we go. And you can see I still have some little like, yeah, I still have some faceting here. Okay, that we just select the tunnel, go here to Object, and hit Shade Smooth. There, okay. Cool. Look, a tunnel. We're in the upside down tunnel, Hawkins tunnel system. Check that out. Pretty cool, right? All right. So now what we're gonna do is this camera is like way too zoomed in. So I'm gonna go to camera, and I'm gonna say focal length. I don't know. I shoot sometimes 24. I mean, nifty 50 looks great. 35 looks great. 24 is wide enough that it's gonna look pretty cool for this effect. So I'm just gonna go 24 focal length, 24 millimeters. That looks pretty decent, okay? Got some demo dogs running through here. Yeah, nice. All right, so we're working on our tunnel. Let's not lose track of that. So if I hit tunnel, I'm gonna give it a shader now, right? And before I do that, I'm going to pause the video and save this so I don't lose it. And I'm back. So now let's give it a shader. So I'm in 2.8, and I could use this like shading tab up here, but I'm not, because I'm animating this thing and I like having everything in one window. So I'm just going to drag up a window from down here. So I go down here, mouse turns to a little crosshair, I click, I drag it up, and then I hit this little button here, and I say shader editor. I select tunnel, I hit new, and now I have a BSDF shader, and wonderful. We see absolutely no difference in this because we're still on solid view. So if I move this over here to rendered view, I'm now in Eevee. And I have no lights in my scene, if you notice. So before we do shading and lighting work together, let's just add some light. So to do that, I will simply, I'll scroll out so you can see this, and I'll turn on wireframe. Okay, here's our tunnel. Pretty cool looking, right? There's our tunnel. It's underground, even though it's floating in the air. I'm going to go add, light, point. All right, I'm just going to use a point for this because it works. And I'm just going to do the same thing. Go to constraint for my point light. I'm going to say follow path, target, camera path, done. So now it's with the camera. So if I hit 0 and then I go back to rendered view, I now have a light on my camera. Do I want it? Probably not. I'm going to make this kind of cool and eerie. So again, this offset, if I go negative, it goes in front of me. I pull that in front, and now I have this like kind of cool eerie look. And this light here I can change to like 75 or something, and that's pretty cool. So now as I follow, it looks like I'm like forever following the light. Pretty cool. And if I want to, I can also duplicate that light and put one behind me. So I'll call this front light. And I'll just go here with this selected, hit Shift D, hit enter. Okay, so it stays on the path, doesn't move. I don't think it will because it's still constrained, but just, I don't know, forced to have it. And then what I'll do is I'll go move this back and just put it behind me. So it's illuminating from behind too. And now I can see the tunnel. And yeah. So that's good. Now we will work on the tunnel. So I hit the shader, and there we are. So the first thing I'll do is give it a bump. So to do that in this shader, all I have to do is go add, all right, texture, and I'm going to choose noise. And I can't plug that right into here. It just doesn't work. So there's like a little blue dot here, a purple dot, and this is yellow and whatever. So I have to have an intermediary. So for that, I go add, vector, bump. Take normal to normal. And then factor over here, the factor of this noise texture. I'm not concerned with the color, just the factor. And I plug that into height. And you see I see nothing. Because this tunnel has like weird UVs and everything attached to it. So I'm going to use object for this. I'm not going to worry about the UVs of it. I'm going to go add. I'm going to say input, texture coordinate. And I'll choose object and plug that into vector. Now I see the effects of my bump. And one thing I can also do here while I'm here is I can add a mapping node in here so that I could further refine this thing. So I'll go add, vector, mapping, throw that in, maybe change that to texture, and there. So now I can like rotate this and move this independently of this. Whether I'll use it or not, I don't know. I probably will later, so I just put it in there for now. If I don't, then you can ignore it and just forget I just did this. Okay, so what to do now? Well, I can play the detail, put the detail up, scale. I can scale it down a little bit and just get something that looks similar to being tunneled out of dirt. Well, looks kind of dirt to me. Starting to look dirt. And details up, and I can use a little bit of distortion that kind of twirls it around a little bit, or not, your call. And now you can see, feels like we're kind of underground in a black and white tunnel. So now we work on the color. Go up here to color, and I can add in a node. So add a texture, and for this I'm going to say Musgrave. And I can plug color into color, or I can create a ramp that'll control the color and use the factor instead. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go add. I'm going to say converter, color ramp, plug factor to factor, and then color to base color. And now, ooh, that darkened it. Pretty cool, right? I can add in the colors. So let's say I want like dirt kind of green or dirt color. And over here I can bring this up. I can get a rock color. And then I can throw in just a little bit of green mix in here. So let's go back and take a look at that. What's that doing? Just giving me this. So I can also take the same mapping here and plug vector into vector here. And now I get splotches. So I can kind of pull that out. And then I can scale it up or down. And just give it some variation. All right. Turn up the lockinarity, scale, dimension, and make it look kind of, I don't know, different. Not too much though, because you don't want it to look crappy, right? So let's turn that down. All right. And we're going pretty fast here, and the lighting is going to handle a lot of this. So we can get pretty forgiving with this, right? So that's cool. I'm not going to play with that too much. Now, let's go to Eevee over here. We're in Eevee. And I'm going to turn on screen space reflections, turn off half-res trace, turn on motion blur while I'm here, because I'm here. No, shadows, I think I'll turn on high bit depth. If your computer and your graphics card doesn't handle this, then don't worry about this. And I may turn on soft shadows because we're going to add some fog, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit too. And now I can go to front light here. That's still back light, right? So front light. Maybe turn this up and see what I get. Okay, that's looking better. So now we're following through this tunnel. It's going fast enough, looks a little dirty. And what I did when I turned on that reflection is this. Check this out, all right? If I go to tunnel, our roughness here is in the middle. I turn that all the way down. This is like really reflective and wet and slimy. Turn this up and it's completely matte. So I want something that's like broken up. So what I can do with that is I can take this exact pattern here, okay, right there, hit Shift D if I want, or I don't even have to, right? I can just Shift D this guy, Shift D, okay? I can take the color or factor from here, factor, and the color to roughness. And now I'm going to just concern myself here with black and white values, right? I could say like this will be pretty wet. This over here, I'll push up to white, will be pretty dry. And I just want to deal with, I don't want to deal with like black and white. Just black and white. I don't want any color in here. I think this is black. Pure black, good. And then this guy here, I can just kind of do a neutral gray, right? So red, grain, blow, and pull them down. And I can kind of pull around what I want here and just kind of break it out and just get like little areas here. And you know what? I don't even need this middle one. I could just hit minus on that. And there we go. So now I'm getting some wet areas. Maybe pull it up a little bit so it's not so wet. And that just adds a little more variation. And I'm liking that. Now inside these tunnels too, I mean, this is like an underground tunnel that like slimy things have created and run through and whatever. So like you're gonna get like roots and stuff sticking out. I'm not gonna worry too much about that right now because this tutorial would last forever if I were to model that whole system. But for now, this is a good starter right here. So now what we can do is start adding some fog and maybe change the light color. So in the show, the upside down world, all this like kind of like dulled out, kind of bluish color, right? So I'm just gonna hit front light, and I'll just change this a little bit, give it that eeriness, just a little bit, and then backlight here, I can give that just same kind of like eerie glow, and now we're cruising through something relatively organic. So now let's add some fog. To do that, I'm just gonna turn on wireframe here. I'm going to add a cube. So add, mesh, cube. This will be like 60. That's pretty good. It surrounds the whole thing. Okay, I'll just move it over in a little bit. Covers the whole thing. Yep, completely surrounded. I'm not going to worry too much about getting super accurate with this. Then I'll scale, maybe scale it down a little bit. And I'm not going to worry if, like, you know, this crunches it or the voxels get extended. It's not going to matter because I'm not going to do too much breakup in this. So let me hit 0. And our cube here is still selected, so I'll just call that fog cube. And I'll give it a shader. Hit new. Defaults to this principled BSDF shader. So I'm going to go ahead, select this, and I can hit Control S on the keyboard for swap. Shader will be volume scatter. Plugged in there, plug that into volume. And if I go here now to Eevee, I have fog. And the density here, you can see like really dense or like not so dense. So you find your happy place. And now it's foggy and it's eerie and it's cool. I kind of like that. And you can always play with this light too. So like front light here, being that we're in fog now, I could do, there we go. Whoa, yeah. All right, so that'll work for now. And also what I can do is under Eevee, I can go to volumetrics and turn on volumetric shadowing if I want, on or off. And now you just get some shadowing and stuff happening. So it's up to you. I'll probably leave it off for now. That's cool. And then tile size, you can turn that down if your graphics card handles it. The lower you go, the better resolution the fog is. All right, so there we go. Now, for the final, we add the quintessential upside down particle things. So, here's what I do for that. I simply go to, let's see if you guys can guess. I'll go to camera path, hit Shift D, hit enter so I don't move it. I'm going to give this guy some geometry, right? So, geometry, depth, throw that up, maybe to like there. That's kind of cool. And I'll go to change this from object, convert to, you don't have to do this part. I think it'll probably work without it, but I'll just convert it to a mesh. There I go. So now I got a big mesh I'm staring at. And what I'll do is I'm going to emit particles from this mesh. So to do that, I'm going to go to my particles tab. I'm going to hit new. Okay, particles is a little like dot with things, vectors coming out of it. Hit this plus particle settings. And what I'll do here is I'll show you what happens, right? So if I zoom out of here, I have these particles number and I go back to 0 and I hit play. Well, the particles start falling out. That's exactly what I don't want. But that's what happens when you first turn on particles. To get rid of that, we do a couple of things here. I'm going to hit frame start at 1, frame end at 1. Now they're all there at the beginning, okay? Then I'm going to hit lifetime 500 because that's how long my animation is. And then I'm going to say source, emit from faces. That's fine for now. Then I'll go down to render. I'll turn off show emitter. It's still going to show inside of our preview here, but it won't show when we render it. And I can do a trick too so you don't see it, but you see the particles. And I'll say scale randomness up to 1. And now if I hit play, so now they're falling, and we don't want that either. So what we do is we simply come up to velocity. I can keep that. I'll go scroll all the way down here to field weights, turn off gravity, and now you see they all just kind of do that. That's kind of what I want. So now they all kind of go outside the tunnel. I don't want that, so I have to go to tunnel. Then I go to physics. I go to collision, and that's good enough. So now if I hit play, you'll see that these little halo things, they stay inside the tunnel. And we're going to be moving pretty fast, so they're moving pretty fast. But you can see here, we have that. However, they're not rendering, and we're still stuck in this thing. So for this guy, okay, camera path 01, I'm just going to call this emitter. I can give him a shader, and then just change this to volume, and he won't be seen inside here. And the rendering won't really take a hit either, but we can undo that before the final render. That's fine. So lastly, we need to make the we need to make the particulates. So for that, I'm going to scroll out, go here, and I'll start off with a grid. So I'll do add, mesh, grid. And that's quite a bit. I don't need that many, so I'll do 4 subdivisions. Size 2, that's fine for this. And that's good. So hit tab, good. Now we give it a shader. So to do that, I'm just going to hit new. And I'm not going to use this principled BSDF shader here. I can use transmission here, but I just want to kind of do it old school for now. So what I'll do here is just take principled shader and I can swap it out. So I can hit Shift S, shader, and I'll choose mixed shader. And what I'll do is I'll plug 2 different shaders into here. So this just takes 2 shaders and mixes them together. So Shift A, I'll go shader. 1, I'll do transparent BSDF. And the second one, Shift A, shader. For this one, I will do emission. I'm not really going to use emission properties on this per se, but I just want to see it. So if I go back here to rendered, we can start seeing the effect. Now we're going to control that with a ramp shader. So I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to go to texture, and I'm going to say gradient texture. Okay, it's kind of a ramp. And then I'll factor to factor, and I'm going to choose quadratic sphere, and there it is. So now all I have to do is move that to the middle. So to do that, I'm just going to go add, and I can do input, texture coordinate, hit object to vector, and now it sits right in the middle. And what I could do is I could add a mapping node in here to make it smaller and conform to the size. So I'll just do that right now. So add, vector, mapping, throw that in, hit texture, and then scale. I could say like 0.8 if I want, and bring it down. Or a cooler way to do this is if I get rid of this. Here's the second way you can do this. Okay, just object to vector. I can put a ramp node in here. So do add, converter, color ramp, and now if I move this, I have a more interactive control than I do over like a mapping node. So this is kind of cooler, and I just kind of like it better. All right, so I will put that in there, and that's now controlling my transmission. And I also, for this shader, I have to go down here to material, and I'll change blend mode to, for this I could use additive. And now we can see, if I turn up the emission, there's our shader. And it's just this kind of like somewhat transparent shader. All right, just like fleck of something. So now what I'll do is just add a distortion to it. So what I could do here is I could just do, okay, see I have all these like divisions here. What I can do is just enough to crumple it up a little bit. So I could go to modifier, add modifier, and I'm just going to do a displace. Hit new, hit this button, and I can choose like anything, noise, Stucci, whatever, Stucci, and now I have this cool flake looking thing that has nice transparency around it. And the cool thing here is that if I go back over here to modifier for this guy, so I go over here to modifiers and I change local to global. Now if I hit Shift D and duplicate, each one of these will have a different displacement on it. Make like a few of these, and you see here that that's pretty good. And now they all have the same shader, so I could turn them up, and now you can see that they all have the same shading, and they're all kind of like look like flecks. Now, if you want to, also what you could do is we could hit each one of these. We can subdivide a little bit more, or we can add in another modifier like a subdivision surface, and that'll clean it up a little bit while still giving it that shader. So for each one of these, I could just go and hit like Control 2 or Control 3 on the keyboard, and that'll give these all a subdivision surface. Now, depending on your computer, this could choke your computer when we use these for particles, but we'll see. So now I can just hit Shift, select each one of these. Okay, so holding down Shift to select them all. See, it says Shift left mouse. And I can hit Control G to group it. And now I give it a new name. I'll call these flakes. And they're in a group. And while I'm here, I'll rotate these up so they're this way. And now all I have to do is hit 0. I go back in here. I get my emitter, wherever you went, emitter. I go to particle. I go to render, and instead of halo, I say collection, and then I choose instance collection, flakes. And then what I'll do is I'll turn on object rotation, and let's see if I play with any of these. Nah, just leave it as is. And if I go back and I hit there, now we have those flakes just kind of bouncing around and flying around, just like in upside down world. And if I go here to, ooh yeah, that's way better. Go to Eevee, and you can see here, I'm getting these flakes. So what we can also do now is obviously, like, those are really hot, so we don't want the strength to be that high on the emission. So we'll just turn them down so they're visible. And this is nice because it'll kind of like let us control like how they look without going too overboard. Right? And there we go. And now also what we could do is we could even add more of these. So if I go to emitter, one last thing here, go to emitter, and I can say number like, say like 10,000. And now it's like really, really pronounced. And they're all going to be like kind of slowly bouncing all over the place and doing their thing. And you'll see a lot more of them. So the last thing we have to do here is cache that file. So what I'll do is I'll go emitter, particles, and now what we do is we use cache. And cache just draws it all out. Like, so because if you try to render this now, especially like across a render farm, these things will be like going bouncing all over. If you do it on your local machine, it might work, but if it crashes, then they kind of get reset. So you want to like map each one of these to a frame. So to do that, you just go to cache and you hit bake. And what it does is it goes through your timeline and it bakes all of these in so that they're all going to be like, their motion will be baked in. So you could save the file and come back to it and render it. If the render crashes, you pick up from where you left off and it's going to be fine. So I'll pause it while this finishes. Okay, so now we have it finished, and if I move the mouse, see, I go to the timeline, those particles are not bouncing all over. They're moving and staying the way they should. So let's give this a render and see what it looks like. Render image, and there we go. So that's looking decent. So let's go ahead and just tweak a few more things and then render the animation and see what it looks like. So I could go here to Eevee. I can go to color management, filmic, and I can say look. I can do like high contrast, and that might give it a freakier look. All right, that's kind of cool. And I can also, let me see, for these, like, these things are kind of bothering me here, these guys. So take the grid, and what I can do is say emission, I don't even know. I could change the color a little bit so they're not so white. And there we go. All right, that's gonna look a little bit better. And then lastly here, I could probably turn up the front light, make it a little bit hotter. So I'm at 1500, maybe I'll go 2500. What does 15,000 do? All right, so that's pretty hot. And then I think lastly here, I keep saying lastly, I know. So this will actually be very close to lastly here. Let's see, shadows here. That's pretty cool. Ooh, volumetric shadows gives it a cooler look. But then I get all these flecks giving shadows. I don't like that. These flecks don't really give shadows. And then my front light here, let's see what I can do with this. Shadow and softness. I can turn that up just a bit. I'm not going to use contact shadows. Nothing's really touching. And it's probably pretty good. Yeah. So if I'm looking straight at the light, let's see what it does. Render image. Whoa, that's really hot. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the power down. All right, that's better. And maybe one last thing here is this, said it again, tunnel. And you know, you can like endlessly tweak this thing. You really could. And spend hours. And I'm not gonna do that for this video, but you get the gist of what I'm doing. And this is how I would go about creating something very similar to what we see in the upside down tunnel system under Hawkins. And this should be pretty good. So let's give it a render and see what it looks like when it's done. So what I do is I just go to output. Okay, there's render, there's output. And I go to this area and I tell it where to save it. Okay, so I went in and I created an upside down tunnel tutorial, and I'm just gonna call this upside down tunnel dot MP4. Now, I usually do a series of PNGs or a series of EXRs and then bring it into a comp program and write out the layers. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to do it like this and just see what we get. So I'm going to hit accept. And now I'm going to change from file format PNG to FFmpeg. And encoding, I'm going to say H.264 in MP4. And everything else is fine. Full HD, that's good, good, good. 24 frames a second, I like that. Okay, so then I just hit render, animation, and it'll render, and then we wait. So I'll pause the video and come back when it's done. Okay, so we're back, and here's the render. And you can see a few things I would probably do differently, maybe. But other than that, you know, just adding more detail, maybe taking the lightness down on here, adding a little more blur in the background, maybe with some depth of field, pushing up the motion blur a little bit. But other than that, it's pretty good start. So anyway, you could take it and run with it, and hopefully you got something out of this video. I know it's a relatively long one, but if you stuck toward the end, you probably pick up some skills that you may be able to use. So hopefully it helped. If it did, hit like, subscribe, share, and I will definitely keep making more. Thanks. See you in the next video.